Today, you will meet 15 people who suffer from extremely rare diseases. You'll see how these brave individuals face chronic and debilitating health conditions, which, instead of defeating them, have made them stronger and filled them with hope to fight for a better future. Let's watch it. It's fascinating. Duangjai Samaksamam. This is a woman whose story is unlike any other. Originally from Surin province in northern Thailand, her life is marked by an extraordinarily rare condition that has made her the center of worldwide attention, as she is believed to be the only person on the planet with it. Her hands, each weighing about 22 pounds, are considered the largest in the world due to a painful condition known as lipomatosis, causing her limbs to be perpetually swollen due to a massive accumulation of fatty tissue. Since she was a child, the reality of her enormous hands condemned her to a life of isolation. For the first 20 years of her life, she remained hidden within the walls of her home, where shame and discomfort kept her away from society. She did not attend school, did not learn to read, and even the simple act of leaving her house was a constant source of anxiety. In her rural environment, there were no specialists who could help her, and she had to wait until adulthood to find answers to her condition. Her life took a radical turn at age 20, when her elderly parents, unable to work, asked her to step out of the shadows and take over the family store, their only source of income. With great effort and sacrifice, she left her life of seclusion behind and faced the curious gazes of a society that did not understand her condition. The simple act of lifting objects, getting dressed, or performing daily tasks became a challenge, as her hands are so heavy that she can barely lift them to comb her hair or wash it. Still, her determination to care for her family was stronger than the physical pain and social rejection. In her battle to find a solution, she underwent a series of surgeries starting at 25. Doctors, fascinated and puzzled by her case, attempted to reduce the size of her hands through various surgeries. However, each intervention seemed to worsen the situation. During one, the surgeon was unable to extract the fat for fear of damaging her nerves. In another, they removed about 1.5 pounds of fat and blood from her hands, but within a month, the swelling returned, leaving her hopeless and with pain that incapacitated her for many daily tasks. Her situation attracted the attention of international specialists such as Dr. Eiju Uchinuma from Kitasato University in Japan, who determined that she is the first and only person in the world to suffer from lipomatosis from the shoulders to the fingers of both arms. He also explained that the cause of her disease is unknown and therefore incurable. Lizzie Velasquez. Lizzie was born on March 13, 1989 in Austin, Texas, under circumstances that seemed to herald a complicated future. She arrived 4 weeks early, weighing only 2.6 pounds, and was so tiny that doctors didn't expect her to walk, let alone speak. However, Lizzie not only defied expectations, but also transformed every obstacle into a source of inspiration for millions. From birth, she has faced challenges that most people could not even imagine. This is because she suffers from Marfan syndrome, an extremely rare condition that prevents her body from accumulating fat. She is also blind in her right eye and has limited vision in her left. Now at 35, she weighs only 64 pounds due to an even rarer variant of the syndrome called Marfan lipodystrophy, which affects only her and one other person in the world. Due to her different appearance, she has been bullied throughout her life and became an easy target for the cruelty of those who could not understand her. This has been her reality, as on her first day of kindergarten, other kids were afraid of her and avoided getting close. As she reached her teenage years, the situation worsened when social media became an open window to the world. At 17, a YouTube video labeled her as the world's ugliest woman. For anyone else, this would be a devastating sentence and an invisible scar that may never heal. But Lizzie decided not to be the victim of this story. She would be the protagonist of her own narrative of triumph. Though the pain was immense, she shook off the tears and stood up, ready to show the world that her worth did not depend on her appearance. Today, she is the successful author of 2 books, serves as a motivational speaker, and is a popular YouTuber with nearly 1 million subscribers. To give you an idea of the reach of her motivational words, her TED Talk has been viewed by more than 13 million people, and she always closes her public presentations by encouraging others not to let their traumas define them, but instead to turn those experiences into a driving force to become the best version of themselves. Dean Clifford. In his native Australia, children born with epidermolysis bullosa are called butterfly children because their skin is as delicate and fragile as the wings of these insects. For them, the mere brush with fabric that for most of us is insignificant can turn into blisters, deep wounds, and unbearable pain. This strange disease is a genetic condition that affects the skin, causing fragility and blisters. Any minor injury, like contact with clothing, heat, or scratching, can lead to severe wounds. In the most complicated cases, patients may develop blisters inside the body in areas like the lining of the mouth and stomach. The sad reality is that this is an incurable and debilitating disease, often fatal before the age of 30. Dean is one of the most well-known patients with this condition because, despite the prognosis that stated he wouldn't live long, he has beaten the odds and is now 39 years old, making him one of the longest-living survivors of the most severe form of epidermolysis bullosa. His case is so severe that doctors did not expect him to survive past age 5. However, he showed unwavering bravery during a childhood marked by endless hospital visits, experimental surgeries, and blood transfusions every 6 weeks. Currently, his routine includes spending 4 hours removing bandages from the previous day before putting on new ones. But that's nothing compared to peeling off his damaged skin without anesthesia to give his body a chance to heal. While the forecasts for his life have always been grim, Dean has not settled for mere survival. He is truly a warrior who has traveled the world giving talks in schools and major corporate events, and he even regularly goes to the gym to lift weights and build muscles worthy of a professional athlete. Among his personal records is bench pressing 330 pounds, which is impressive for someone who, according to doctors, wouldn't live past 5 years. Mark Vubenhorst. Since ancient times, water has been referred to as the vital liquid, because without it, life would be impossible. One person who takes this idea literally is Mark, a 35-year-old German architect who needs to consume at least 5.3 gallons of water a day to stay alive. The reason behind this is a rare metabolic disease called nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, which causes the kidneys to constantly expel water and prevents the body from properly hydrating. If he dares to ignore this thirst for more than an hour, the punishment is relentless. In the blink of an eye, his body begins to dry out, presenting symptoms that for anyone else would signal a critical state after days without drinking fluids. Because of this, cracked lips, dry skin, dizziness, and mental confusion appear within hours, if not minutes. Since childhood, he has had to adapt to this complicated reality. At first, he managed as best he could. He played with other kids and tried to live like anyone else, but the limitations became more evident over time, and frustration began to build. The sadness of not being able to do simple things, like sleeping for more than 2 hours straight, or just going out to play without worrying about access to water, led him into a deep depression. The German has never known true rest, as sleeping is almost impossible when his body forces him to get up every hour to drink and then to empty his bladder, averaging up to 50 trips to the bathroom in 24 hours. Mark also went through a dark episode where death was just a few steps away. After leaving work, he was on a train heading home, and since the journey isn't very long, there was no cause for concern until the train broke down. Without a water bottle in hand, he was trapped, unable to quench his insatiable thirst. Within minutes, his body began to show signs of dehydration, and by the time he reached the station, he was on the verge of collapse, with blurred vision and barely conscious. If it hadn't been for a friend who just happened to be there that night and knew about his situation, things could have turned out very differently. For this reason, he describes his friend as a guardian angel, who appeared right when he needed it most, helping him quench his thirst and saving his life in a way that made him realize miracles do exist. Alex Barker and Aaron Smith. Alex never expected Aaron to smile when they finally met in 2015 after 2 years of virtual friendship. He didn't doubt her. Rather, it was because they both suffer from Mobius syndrome, a rare neurological disorder that affects fewer than 20 people per million and causes facial paralysis, preventing them from smiling and expressing emotions like other humans. They met through a Facebook group created for individuals with the condition, where a small but passionate community shares support for those who are often misunderstood. What started as a simple conversation about their shared experiences quickly transformed into something more significant. However, there was one problem. They were separated by an ocean, with Erin living in Linwood, North Carolina, and Alex hailing from Coventry, England. Still, she thought it would be nice to have a friend who understood the challenges she faced throughout her life. After chatting for a while, both were surprised to discover romantic feelings for each other. Despite the 6,000 kilometers that separated them, Alex mustered the courage to travel to North Carolina to meet her in person and confirm something he already knew deep down. Erin was the right girl for him. The meeting was magical. During that week filled with walks through local vineyards and visits to the mountains, their relationship deepened even further and continued to blossom. By July 2016, they reunited in California during the National Mobius Syndrome Conference. There, Alex orchestrated a daring yet heartfelt proposal as they strolled along the Santa Monica Pier. He pulled out an engagement ring and asked Erin to marry him. The wonderful wedding took place on November 10, 2016, at a church in Lexington, North Carolina. And since then, the happy couple has resided in Coventry, England, where they plan to spend a few years before returning to the United States. Their love story demonstrates that while they may not be able to smile like others, their hearts have always been capable of doing so with joy, love, and of course, the courage to face tomorrow. Emma Little. 1 in a million is a phrase we often hear to describe unique medical cases. But for this 9-year-old girl, it's a daily reality, as she is one of only 80 children in the United States who has xeroderma pigmentosum, a rare genetic disease that makes her essentially allergic to sunlight. Under no circumstances can she be exposed to ultraviolet rays, and even the light from a regular light bulb is unsafe for her. Otherwise, her ultra-sensitive skin suffers damage that her body cannot repair. Moreover, throughout her short life, she has faced 14 surgeries to remove cancerous lesions that appeared on her skin after being exposed to light. For this reason, the outside world is a minefield of UV rays, and her life revolves around avoiding contact with something so basic for most of us. Each morning, her routine is quite different from that of others who simply get dressed and leave the house. She prepares by putting on gloves, 2 layers of UV-resistant clothing, applying sunscreen, lip balm, and finishing off with a hat that keeps her cool while blocking harmful rays from the sun. Her parents explain that the entire family's routine had to adapt to this reality. Every outing requires detailed logistics, planning schedules to avoid daylight, and they rarely travel to the beach or other similar tourist sites where sunlight is stronger. Fortunately, Emma's family has found incredible support in their community, which has taken the necessary steps to ensure she can attend school safely, such as covering the windows with UV protective film and adjusting any facility elements that may pose a danger. Alejandra. A hemangioma is a benign growth of extra blood vessels on the skin and is usually not a cause for concern, as they affect 5% of children and typically disappear around the baby's first birthday. Alejandra, however, has a different story. Her hemangioma did not disappear and instead overtook her face, causing severe deformities that required 17 reconstructive surgeries. Dr. Cohen, who has been treating her since birth, explains that the condition grew uncontrollably and invaded her tissues to the point that it destroyed her upper lip, part of her palate, and half of her nose, including the nasal passages essential for her to breathe properly. As a result, she lost the right side of her face and half of her jaw. Although the growth stopped by the time she was 2 years old, it had already closed off her right nasal cavity and half of her mouth. Over the past 12 years, the doctor has performed multiple surgeries to repair the damage. But despite these interventions aimed at improving her quality of life, Alejandra could not help but feel anxious about how she would look after each surgery. In fact, she prefers to wait several weeks after the operation to look in the mirror and see the progress the skilled hands of her surgeon have made on her face. For her most recent surgery, she underwent a procedure that involved extracting fat from her abdomen to mix it with stem cells. These were then injected into the scarred areas of her face, leaving her to await the results. 7 weeks after the operation, Alejandra feels renewed and relieved to not feel so different from others. While she still has a couple more procedures ahead, she smiles as she says her self-esteem has never been higher. Amaya. This little girl was born with caudal regression syndrome, a condition that develops during pregnancy and affects the lower part of the spine. Her condition meant she came into the world without legs, with small kidneys and a slightly tethered spinal cord. Additionally, her diagnosis includes bilateral microtia, meaning her ears were small and malformed and her ear canals were closed. She was also born with a cleft palate, a slightly recessed chin as part of Pierre Robin's sequence, and suffers from mild heart defects and respiratory issues. Doctors discovered she would be born with this extensive list of complications during a 20-week ultrasound. It became clear that her legs were not developing, but Jaylyn and Chris, her parents, had to wait until her birth to understand the extent of her challenges. Upon entering the world, the baby faced immediate obstacles, such as a cleft palate that complicated her breathing and a small jaw that exacerbated the problem. In her first 6 weeks of life, she underwent 3 critical surgeries, and after several months in the hospital, she finally went home, where her family wasted no time adapting their lives for her. Her older sister, Araya, became her protector, and Jaylyn learned sign language to communicate better with her. Each day is a battle, but Amaya's family has done everything possible to ensure she feels included and supported. With constant therapy to improve her mobility, they have proven that no obstacle is too great. They also created a fundraising page so that in the future she can undergo spinal surgery that will greatly improve her quality of life. Despite the many challenges in her short life, Amaya is a whirlwind of joy, energy, and laughter. And even her parents describe her as a little hero because she is determined to be independent. Zoe Buxton and Lucy Fretwell. These twins, born in Northern Ireland, face a reality that is as challenging as it is extraordinary, as both suffer from progressive osseous fibrodysplasia, an extremely rare genetic disease that affects only 1 in 2 million people, gradually turning them to stone by transforming their muscles and tendons into bone. Although they were both born with small, bony lumps on their toes as a common sign of the disease, it went unnoticed by doctors. At 5 years old, Zoe suffered a fall from the sofa that fractured her elbow. After the cast was removed, she was unable to straighten her arm due to abnormal bone growth, marking the first real sign of the disease that would change her life forever. At the same time, Lucy had to confront the reality of her health condition at a young age. At 11, she tripped at school and injured her neck, leading to bone growth that prevented her from lifting her arms above her head. That same year, Zoe broke her leg after falling off a scooter and was unable to straighten it, which forced her to use a wheelchair. Despite the many restrictions and frustrations, the support from their family and community never wavered, and both sisters found strength in the love of those around them. Even with a bleak future ahead, neither of them dared to succumb to their fate. Instead of giving up, they chose to live life intensely, cherishing every small moment of happiness. Zoe, who is also a fashion blogger, married the love of her life, Mike Buxton. The happy couple met online when she was 17, and since then, Mike has been her greatest support, both emotionally and physically. Zoe recalls how her determination led her to walk down the aisle on her wedding day instead of using the wheelchair she sometimes needs for long distances, declaring that having a disability did not mean she couldn't enjoy the happiest day of her life. Together, they dream of starting a family, but they know there's a 50% chance of passing on progressive osseous fibrodysplasia to a future child. On the other hand, Lucy also found love with Michael Smith, a teacher she met in 2015, and they got engaged to marry the following year. Like her sister, she dreams of having a child, but admits it's not a viable option for someone with her health condition. Nevertheless, she is open to the idea of adopting a baby to form the family she desires. They still have many dreams to fulfill, but the twins must face the reality that their disease is progressive and worsening over time, which implies a gradual loss of mobility. Still, both remain very positive about the future and refuse to let their genetic disorder prevent them from living life to the fullest. Lucy adds that while it's difficult to maintain optimism, having her sister by her side gives her strength, as they support each other on the hardest days and participate in clinical trials for a drug that could change their lives and the lives of others suffering from the same disease. Ignacia San Martin. The story of this little girl, just 5 years old, began even before her birth, when she had to face a silent enemy growing slowly around her face. A benign tumor called lymphangioma took over her chin and cheeks, and as it grew, this intruder only expanded, increasingly constricting her trachea and compromising her ability to breathe. This strange illness was not a simple obstacle. It was actually a conglomerate of tiny cysts that, while not malignant, endangered her life. Her mother, Danitza, describes with pain the difficulties her daughter faced day by day, as when she caught a cold, she struggled to breathe properly. She also suffered ear pain, balance issues, discomfort while chewing, and constant pain at the base of her tongue. Adding to this was the emotional toll, as the young Chilean girl realized her face was different from that of other children, regularly facing negative comments from strangers who could not understand that she was just an innocent girl fighting against an illness. After multiple tests, doctors confirmed that her lymphangioma was caused by a malfunction of the lymphatic vessels in her neck. As these vessels spiraled out of control, the tumor grew uncontrollably, threatening to crush her trachea and obstruct her airways. After years of waiting and desperation, a ray of hope finally emerged. Maxillofacial surgeon Dr. Gonzalo Rosell offered to perform the risky operation that could change Ignacia's life. The complicated surgery was a true challenge, as an unexpected complication put Ignacia's life in jeopardy. When they removed most of the tumor, a remaining section was so fused with blood vessels that it began to bleed alarmingly. The medical team raced against the clock to control the hemorrhage and ensure that Ignacia left the operating room alive. After 14 long hours of uncertainty, the surgery was declared a success, with Dr. Rossell affirming that they had removed the tumor's source and were confident it would not return. In this way, the brave doctors, nurses, and specialists achieved what seemed impossible, liberating Ignacia from the physical and emotional weight of the tumor that had marked every aspect of her life since birth. Anthony Perkins. This high school teacher vividly remembers the day his life changed forever. He was 9 years old when a small scar transformed into an abnormal growth called a keloid, an elevated and bulging scar tissue that seemed to have a mind of its own. For Anthony, these protrusions became an inevitable part of his life, growing and expanding far beyond the original injuries. So over time, the excess collagen produced during the healing process only added layers to the skin that seemed to take over his face. By the time he turned 34, keloids covered parts of his face, neck, torso, and back. Although the left side of his face was so affected that his ear was nearly hidden, his hearing remained intact. The teacher admits that the hardest battle was not the physical scars, but the rejection he faced throughout his life. Despite this, he found in the children he teaches a refuge of love and understanding, as it was actually the adults who constantly judged him. Thanks to his positive attitude, he never gave up hope of getting rid of the keloids. So after 25 years living with physical and emotional pain, he launched a GoFundMe campaign to raise the necessary funds for the costly surgery. While he had previously undergone 4 surgeries, the tissues kept growing back larger and faster each time. But this time, he found Dr. Michael Jones in New York, who gave him hope of finally eliminating the keloids for good. After undergoing 2 surgeries within 7 months, Anthony felt a real possibility that his skin could return to what it once was, and that his scars would no longer be an obstacle. His battle may not be over, but at least he has learned to turn his experience into a beacon of hope for others, especially his students, whom he inspires to never give up, no matter how difficult the challenges they encounter along the way. Kayla. Just a couple of years ago, she was a woman full of life and passion for the future, working as a restaurant manager and enjoying her free time with family and friends. Everything changed abruptly when she suffered a workplace accident in which her hand got caught in a door and began swelling uncontrollably. After 2 weeks, the swelling showed no signs of subsiding, and she felt a sharp pain with even the lightest touch to her skin. At that moment, she realized that something serious was happening to her body, So, after a round of tests, her doctor diagnosed her with complex regional pain syndrome, a form of chronic pain that develops after an injury, accident, or surgery when a nerve suffers severe damage and sends constant pain signals to the brain while also causing bruising and swelling in various parts of the body. In Kayla's case, that bump from her hand against the door triggered intense pain 24 hours a day, and she describes the sensation as if her body were burning from the inside. The most worrying thing is that there is no known cure for the syndrome, and although she underwent 40 different procedures to try to get the condition under control, none worked, and instead acted as pain accelerators. Now she experiences electric shocks, spontaneous swelling, a burning sensation inside her body, and even her skin has developed blisters and scars resembling burns. However, a small window of hope opened when a team of Italian scientists claimed to have found a cure for complex regional pain syndrome. But so far, the treatment is not legal outside of Italy. Regardless, she remains positive and willing to do whatever it takes to travel to Europe and receive the cure for the disease that has caused her so much pain, with the goal of regaining the independent and positive life she once led. Monique Samuels. When she was just 12 years old, this young woman from Atlanta suffered a simple ankle sprain that later turned into something much more serious. After months of being examined by multiple doctors, she finally found a specialist who confirmed her worst fears. She was diagnosed with lymphedema, a condition that causes excessive fluid accumulation in the tissues, leading to extreme swelling in her legs. Now that she understood the challenge she was facing, Monique had to learn to live with her new reality. But as her legs became enormous, she started attracting the attention of curious onlookers who only sought to hurt her rather than offer words of encouragement. This led her to avoid going out and enjoying life for years, often covering her legs with bandages and shying away from everyday experiences as her condition controlled every decision she made. Then, a turning point arrived. Tired of suffering, Monique decided to take charge of her life when she realized she didn't want to live in hiding anymore. Thanks to a series of 10 reconstructive surgeries to reduce the size of her limbs, she achieved her first victory towards self-acceptance. Today, she declares herself a new person with a different outlook on her future, sharing her story on her YouTube channel, where she serves as a voice for others like her who struggle to accept themselves and find their place in a world that often doesn't understand what it means to live with a chronic condition. Cora Jean Rubin. April 4th, 2016 was the day the Rubin family's life changed forever. Little Cora was born with primary lymphedema, a rare and perplexing disease that causes swelling in her hands, arms, and lower body due to the abnormal accumulation of fluid in her tissues. While searching for answers, her parents learned that it is not a hereditary condition, and that it was simply fate that their daughter had to fight this battle. Considering that lymphedema causes malformations in the lymphatic vessels, the swelling is constant and generates chronic pain. Cora's parents tried to alleviate her suffering with compression garments, bandages, and massages, but nothing worked. Even specialists at the Mayo Clinic, widely regarded as one of the best hospitals in the world, were left without answers regarding the condition that threatened to ruin their daughter's quality of life. However, the Rubin family was not willing to give up or allow their daughter to suffer in silence. Through their frantic search, they found the Foldi Clinic in Germany, specializing in lymphedema. While there was no clear diagnosis, the doctors were optimistic and had several theories on how to approach the case, but there was still another obstacle to overcome: the high cost of treatment in a country thousands of kilometers away. Fortunately, the kindness of family, friends, and countless strangers allowed them to raise $20,000, and they traveled to Germany for Cora to receive a groundbreaking treatment that could offer her some normalcy in her life. Although there is still much work to be done, the young girl is a ray of light amidst the darkness and is thriving like any other child her age. Whether it's jumping on her trampoline, practicing gymnastics, or showing everyone that her spirit is greater than the limitations of her body. Lewis. Ichthyosis is a condition characterized by skin with a scaly texture that gives it an almost reptilian appearance. For Louis, this has been his reality for the past few years, as for most of his life he was a perfectly normal person, until dryness took over his skin, causing him pain that prevents him from performing daily tasks like he used to. According to the doctor who assessed his condition, this is one of the worst cases of ichthyosis she has seen in her career because the patient grows scales over his existing scales, making it difficult to apply effective treatment. As an incurable disease, there is no medication or therapy that can resolve the issue once and for all. The situation is complicated because in Louis's case, his skin has become so thick and scaly that he can barely walk, and his toenails are so bulky they resemble shells. The patient also admits that on a scale from 1 to 10, he rates the pain in his feet as a 9, expressing with a heavy heart that what he longs for most is to be able to walk in the park with his grandchildren without feeling so much pain. Despite the severity of his condition, the solution turned out to be surprisingly simple. An intensive hydration treatment with petroleum jelly covering his feet and then wrapped in a damp sock to prevent the dryness from taking over his skin again. After some time following this treatment, his once cracked and heavily scaled skin has begun to heal, and it is no longer a battlefield filled with pain that prevented him from enjoying the simplest pleasures in life, like taking a walk with his grandchildren. Now tell me, which of these conditions do you find the most challenging? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Here are 2 options that you'll surely love.